Whew. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Beaver Dash, here to bring you all up to date information on Beaver football. I'm your host, Morgan Heffelfinger, with our co hosts. It ain't Coors Light, it ain't Bush Light, that's Gus Light. What's going on, Gus?
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Really excited. We finally got Beaver Dash. The Beavers represented on here at Dash Sports. But I say let's get right to this. Obviously, very big week for the Pac-12. Very big week for football in general. As we know, this last Thursday, yesterday, the Pac-12 CEO group voted to approve a season to start on November 6th. I'm going to hand it right back to you, Hef. Do you believe this was the right decision to start a season November 6th?
See, now I'm a little conflicted with the decision, especially with the last week we had in the NFL, with them not having any time to really prepare for the season. Um, I think that the same thing is going to happen in the Pac-12, in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of injuries, and I think there's going to be a lot of nerves. It's going to be tough for all the teams to really come back and get into the groove of things, because if you don't have time to prepare and to practice, it's going to be tough to play. Even if it's not a whole season, even if it is a 7-game season, it's still going to be tough to play and try to keep all your teams from being injury riddled. And a lot of these guys have futures in the NFL, so getting injured now is going to be a tough thing, especially if they're trying to get into the draft. And another thing that I don't like is that I don't think the Pac-12 had as serious of a plan as a lot of the other conferences did. A lot of people already had all these things figured out way earlier in the future. They know how they're going to do their testing. They know how they're going to handle the practices, how they're going to handle no fans. And I just don't think the Pac-12 gave themselves enough time to really come out and bring all the energy that they're going to really need to bring and all the preparations that they're going to need to have a successful season.
Yeah. I mean, I'll agree and I'll disagree with you there. I don't think it's a result because the Pac-12 didn't have enough time to make the right decision, because they had just as much time as every other one of these conferences. I think what happened was they were the first conference to come out and say, we're canceling fall sports, no fall sports for 2020. And they kind of just expected everyone else was going to follow suit. They thought the SEC, the ACC, Big 12, they were all going to cancel their seasons as well. And that was not the case. And as a result, it kind of made the Pac-12 look a little foolish. And that's why I kind of believe they went back and they altered their decision. However, to address your point of injuries, well, I do believe it is a fair point. I don't believe that is a reason we should not have the season. Players still have the option to opt out and retain their eligibility. They also, if the lead up time, the prep time is still the same as it would be for a normal season, essentially. What it would be done a non-COVID year, players report back early June, they do conditioning, and they don't get the full padded practices until about a month before the season starts anyway. And if you look at that, they are basically cleared to do full pad practices starting now, which is 6 weeks before the season starts. So it's really giving them 2 extra weeks of full pads. Again, this can kind of come back. It can result in some teams having the advantage, specifically when you look at a school like Colorado, University of Colorado Boulder, not being approved by the government to practice for 2 weeks puts them at a disadvantage. But I don't know if the injuries are necessarily a reason we should say that there is not going to be a reason there shouldn't be a season.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really got to me was that they pulled the trigger so quickly. And like you said, they thought everybody was going to follow suit and come back in and also cancel their seasons. But a lot of the major conferences decided, like, heck no, we're going to play some football and we're ready. But I just don't think the Pac-12 made the right decision as being the first conference. But I also understand everybody was tiptoeing around the idea of, is there going to be football? Is there not going to be football? And the Pac-12 made their decision, but I just don't think that they made that decision at the right time. I think they pulled it a little too early, and now it's really coming back to bite them now that they've decided to rescind that idea so late in time.
Well, let me ask you this, Hef. I kind of analyzed the decision whether student athletes who aren't being paid should play sports, and what I'm looking at it are these 3 things. The first is health, and we've kind of covered it related to injuries. That's one thing. Are they doing enough to protect the players from having future injuries that are going to set them back for the career? You are saying you don't think the Pac-12 is doing an adequate job of that. I disagree with you on that. But I think another big aspect of this decision is, are they going to do this in a way that is safe and doesn't result in huge spreads of the coronavirus. What do you think about that? Do you think this is from purely a coronavirus standpoint? Obviously, neither of us are scientists. We don't know. We're not experts on this. But purely looking at it from that, do you think it is irresponsible to be having football while this virus is still affluent in our nation?
I don't. I think that the way that the NBA is doing it with the bubble, I think the way that the NFL is doing it with their constant testing and their constant monitoring over everything, I think that if the Pac-12 and every other conference in college football takes notes, actually looks into what they need to do, does the research, I think that they'll be able to keep everything under control. Mm-hmm. Especially, it's tougher when it comes to college football because while these athletes are athletes, they're also students. Mm-hmm. And they have to, maybe even if they're not having in-person classes, they're still students and they're going to be around a lot of people on campus. So it's, if you can keep those players from going out and doing things that would, jeopardize not only our team season, but also the whole Pac-12 season, and the same thing with other schools. And that's exactly how it was in the bubble, and the same thing with the NFL. These players are on constant monitor, not allowed to leave, not allowed to go out and party and have social gatherings and stuff like that. So as long as they keep everything in check, I think that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you, honestly. Like I said, I'm not an expert when it comes to how viruses are spread or whatever. But one thing I would say I have a good amount of expertise in is how college students behave. And I know for a fact that if there was not going to be constant testing and if the football players or whatever sport it may be did not have the responsibility of their team to remain safe, do adequate social distancing practices, whatever, I believe there'd probably be more virus being spread, because if you're not playing a sport, you're not having that constant testing, you don't need to stay healthy you don't have as much of a reason to stay healthy, you're probably gonna be more likely to go out with your friends and whatnot. So from a standpoint of the coronavirus, it seems like we're on the same page. And that kind of brings me to my final point. The health aspects of starting the season we've kind of covered. But I want to ask, do you think seven games was the right amount?
I don't, just because that's one of the lowest, if not the lowest, amount of games to be played by any college football team this year with the Pac-12. And I think that really jeopardizes the chances of any Pac-12 team making it to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is clear-cut favorites in the Pac-12, especially with Oregon. But I mean, a team's going to have to go 7-0.
Yeah. And
that's going to be the toughest thing for any team to go 7-0 to even get a look, a sneak peek, or a consideration into how this is even going to happen. I think it's going to be tough, but I don't know if it jeopardizes the season. I mean, it's getting guys out there, it's getting guys playing football. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be like the best thing for them, but I don't know if 7 games was enough.
I see a question in the chat from Ben, how they decided on the number 7. Just to quickly go over how they did that, essentially, each team in the Pac-12 South will play each respective team in the Pac-12 South, and same with the North. Every team in the Pac-12 North plays every team in the Pac-12 North, and then you have one game against a team from the opposite division. So we're going to get into the Beaver schedule in a little bit, but essentially you play every team within your division, one more team on the other division, and then on the final week during championship, conference championship week, even the teams who do not qualify for the championship are going to play another game against a team in a different division. But no, have to touch on your point. I really do agree. I don't think 7 games is enough, and I would be shocked if any Pac-12 team gets into the college football playoff. I mean, Oregon, they're not going to, but I know a lot of people are going to want to say you could go 7-0 in the Pac-12. They'll probably go 6-1 when we upset them. But they're saying even if they go 7-0, why would you put a team that only beat Pac-12 schools into a college football playoff when you know damn well there's probably 3 teams in the SEC that would blow out the Ducks? So it likely won't happen. But kind of my final point on this subject, I want to get your input on, Hef, was do you think, and people in the chat, if anyone's in the chat, I'd like to get your opinions as well, do you think a conference championship means as much this season as it typically would in a normal year?
I don't. And the reason I think that is because it's such a rushed schedule. You're not playing as many games. You're not having the wear and tear of a real season on it. So I think a lot of teams are going to be more fresh. They're going to have more time to not rest specifically, but they're not going to be playing as many games, taking as many hits, making as many tackles. And I just don't think that it's going to affect the teams as much. So I don't think it's going to mean as much, if that makes any sense to you. I don't think that coming out on top of the Pac-12 in such a rushed, not as tough schedule is going to be as important as to winning like a full season, especially with fans being there and all that, with your schools respectively cheering for you. I think that it's just going to be really different. I'm not to say that it's not going to be as important, but I do think it's going to be a different feeling than winning an actual championship.
No, I'm going to disagree with you pretty heavily there, because I think winning a Pac-12 championship this year means just as much, if not more, than a typical season. And I'm saying this as someone who knows I'm fully aware that the school I hate the most is the favorite to win it, so I don't want to say this, but I think it could mean more this season. The reason why is because each team knows that they have 6 games. Each game is going to be amplified in intensity and in effort. There's also you're less likely to play a team that's bottom of the pack late in the season, has no chance to win the conference championship, is already mailed it in for the season. You're less likely to play a team that fired their head coach halfway through the season. So every team is more likely to be at full strength due to there's less weeks where they can get injured, and there's less weeks where they can get injured, right? And then there'll be more talent on the field as a result. But pushing along to our next topic, staying on this scheduling, we both came prepared essentially with looking at Oregon State's schedule, and we're going to kind of do our best, Max Kellerman right here, and make some accurate predictions on how the season is going to go. So what we did, obviously the schedule is not out, but we know we're going to have to play Washington State, University of Washington, Cali, Stanford, and Oregon. And although we do not know the team we're going to play from the other division, we both decided we want to talk about if that potential matchup was against ASU or U of A, because I think we have some disagreements there. But quickly going, Tef, say these are the 7 teams we play, the 7 I just mentioned. What is our record in those 7 games?
I'm going big. You already know I'm going big. I believe in my Beavers. I'm hitting it with the 5-2 record. We're going 5-2 in the Pac-12 this year.
So you're telling me we're winning more games in 7 games this year, or same amount of games in 7 games this year as we did over a 12-game season last year?
I believe so, especially if we're playing the Pac-12 North division. I think that we're going to win 5 games this year.
All right. I have us at 3-4 with dubs over Washington State, Cali, and U of O, losing to Washington, Stanford, ASU, and U of A. Who were the 2 losses you have projected?
The 2 losses I had projected for us was Stanford and Washington.
And why would you? I mean, obviously, we're not favoring either one of those matchups, but what is the main reasoning for that?
Well, last year, I think in 2019, they played really well against Washington. Washington's always a big, beefy team, always comes out, plays hard, ready to rumble. We only lost to them 19-7 last year. The biggest thing about it was that we held their rushing game to a lot less yards than we did in previous years. Sure. And this year, they don't have Jacob Eason anymore. Salvin Ahmed got drafted, and Hunter Bryant also got drafted, respectively, to the Colts, Dolphins, and the Lions. Richard Newton, who was our halfback this year, is coming back. He was another tandem with Ahmed last year. And I think that this year, yeah, as Ben said in the chat, I think our defense is going to be really good this year. I think that if Oregon State can wake up, come out, play hard from the beginning, because that's what happened against Washington last year, is that they didn't come out, they weren't awake, they didn't end up scoring the first touchdown until the 3rd quarter. If they come out to play in the beginning and play hard the whole game, all 4 quarters, I think that Oregon State could top Washington, or couldn't top Washington this year, but I think we would have at least a chance. Yeah,
so you're basically saying each game you think we have a fighter's chance compared to some other years, maybe our freshman, sophomore year, we're both seniors. Freshman, sophomore year, we knew going into that game we're leaving by halftime, not coming back, right? Are you basically saying this year we're going to have a chance in any game we play?
Yeah, well, you got to think about last year. A lot of our losses weren't blowout losses. The only real big blowout losses were to Utah and U of O. U of O wasn't even that big of a loss. I think that if you look back to last year, especially Washington State, we lost by 1. Stanford, we lost by 3. I'm pretty sure it was 3. So we're in there in these games, and we didn't take very many significant losses to our team this year. We lost Hodgins at the wide receiver, and we lost Luton at
I
quarterback.
mean, that's saying we're not losing a lot. I mean, those are 2 big blows.
Yeah,
2 most important guys on our team.
yeah, 2 big blows, but also I think with the coach we have now in Smith, we're gonna have a next man up mentality. And I think that Oregon State is going to come back next year and really step it up and find a way to edge out those losses that we had last year and turn them into wins.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you in the sense where I think we're going to have a chance in any game we play this year. I'd be surprised. Well, I don't know. It's hard to be surprised with Oregon State over some of the games I've seen. But I would be surprised if we play more than 1 game this year that we lose by over 14 points. I think we're going to be right in there every game. The only reason I have us losing to teams like U of A, ASU, and UW and Stanford, where 4 games where we really could have a chance in it, I think the reason we're going to lose that is because it comes to experience at the QB position. Yes, I think Gibbia will be a solid player for us, but Luton, it always seemed like when he was in the game, he had the offense under control, rarely turned the ball over. He gave us a chance to win. And we really don't have any history to suggest that Gibbia or whoever our starting QB is going to be, if they'll be able to maintain that. So I think due to the fact that we lost a couple skilled wide receivers and then also took a big blow at the quarterback position, that's why I'm putting us slightly below your performance.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you need to take into consideration, though, when thinking about this quarterback controversy that we have going on at Oregon State, is that our coach himself was a quarterback for Oregon State. He knows how to play quarterback. He knows how to talk quarterbacks through things. And even though, like I said, there wasn't a lot of time to prepare with spring ball, summer ball, etc., I still think he's going to have the right mindset going in and helping the quarterbacks that we do have now learn the offense, learn how to control a game, and keep us in the games. And another thing that I think that's going to be a big factor into us winning those or getting back those losses that we got last year, the ones that were close, was if you take a look at the amount of time that Oregon State had the ball, it was significantly less every loss that we had. Mm-hmm. So it's about maintaining the ball, keeping the ball, and not allowing the other offense to get onto the field, because Oregon State's defense is already good enough, in my opinion. But it's about how long we can keep the ball in our hands on offense.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. However, just to end this topic, because I know me and you stand united on this front, and I think that's probably puts us in the 1% of people who believe this. But I truly believe Oregon State is going to beat the Ducks this year. And the reason for that is last year we should have won that game. If Lewin doesn't get hurt, I think we do win that game. And that's at U of O at Austin Field, one of the loudest stadiums in all of college football. And we took them right into the 4th quarter. They wouldn't put us away. This year, we get them at home. Yes, there's no fans, but you're in Corvallis, one of the best. No, I'm just kidding. We're in Corvallis, but at least we're not in Eugene. But I truly think we have an experienced defense who's played in multiple years now. They have a new QB coming in there. They might have more talent, but every year, except our sophomore year, it's been tough. Rivalry week, I think anything can happen. Do you agree with those points, or why do you see us as beating the Ducks this year?
If I'm going to be honest with you, I'll give you my biased take and I'll give you my non-biased take. My biased take is I will never, ever, ever, ever in my life say that the Ducks are ever going to beat the Beavers. It's against my morality. It's against my personal beliefs. It's like my religion. I just can't stray away from it. The Beavers are my love. I'm going to be here forever. Not actually. I got to get out of Corvallis sometime soon, but I'm going to love the Beavs for the rest of my life. And I'll never say the Ducks are going to beat the Beavs. My unbiased take, I agree with the points that you made. We were close in every year except for our sophomore year. The last time we beat U of O in the Civil War was 2016, before you and I were even in school. So we didn't get to witness it, but that was still a cool thing to hear when we came in as freshmen. I think we're going to play them tough. It's like any rivalry. It's like any rivalry in any sport. Anything can happen. If the team comes out to play, there's absolutely no reason that we can't beat U of O this year. Absolutely no reason.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. I was actually talking with some University of Oregon students a couple weeks ago, and it made me want this win even more, because they were basically telling me that they don't care about us. Basically, they have more of a rivalry with UW, care more about Washington. They don't care about our Civil War game. And I would really love just get one of those wins in my 4 years here to, kind of remind them that we're still here. But Anyway, moving on to our next topic. How exactly do you believe, obviously football is moving to November 6th. They announced the start for women's basketball, men's basketball, all winter sports will be November 25th. How much of an effect, if any, do you think moving football to basically winter, when winter sports would start, have on these other winter sports?
I think it's gonna be tough because I know, especially at Oregon State, that basketball, men's and women's basketball, are a big factor into the fan groups that go around OSU. I think what really comes into play here is that there's not going to be fans in the stadium at Reser during football season. And everybody knows, especially if you're from OSU watching this right now, you understand, any school, honestly, you understand that the whole reason that you love football is not just for the game, but it's also the atmosphere of the game. When you show up to the game, you're there to meet your friends, have fun, watch your team win. Even if they lose, it's still a good time. The tailgates, the food, everything, the music, none of that's going to be there. Everybody's going to be watching from home. I just don't think that personally many people are going to choose Beaver football over Beaver men's basketball or women's basketball because both of our basketball teams have been better than Beaver football in recent years. That's not to say that I don't think Beaver football is going to get views, because I think they are, but I think that it's going to cut into their views a lot because it's not something that we can go out and do now. You know what I mean? It's not something we can go to the game and watch and enjoy that atmosphere. It's going to be sitting on my couch watching Beaver football, whether they win and or lose. And like I said, 5-2, so we won't be watching many losses. But I think it's going to play into the whole thing that if you're not there, are a lot of people really going to care?
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. I understand. The biggest thing about football is that you go there, it's especially in Corvallis, when the team has been historically not all that good. I'm not going to a football game because I think we're going to beat USC and have this great upset win. I'm going there because that's the only thing to do on Saturday in Corvallis, or it's the most fun thing to do. You know what I mean? But with that being said, I really don't think the winter sports are going to affect football's ratings, football's viewership at all. It's going to have a very minimal amount, if at all. And the reason I say that is because, one, football is only played on Saturdays mostly for the Pac-12. Obviously, we have a couple Thursday games, going to be Friday games this year. But in large, it's on Saturday afternoons. And that is going to conflict with women's or men's basketball maybe 1 or 2 times out of the season. Obviously schedules aren't out yet, but I don't think it's going to be a decision people need to make most of the time. It's not going to be an either or. What can I watch?
Yeah, but I mean, I think the biggest thing is that there is only going to be 7 games. So even if there is any of those conflictions, it's going to be tough because basketball is most likely going to play a lot more games than the football team is going to play. So when you consider that there's only going to be 7 games, you're thinking maybe that 3 of those games conflict with men's and women's basketball. So now you're out half the viewers for 3 games, and now there's only 4 games left in the season where you're really getting that full attention. That's what I'm getting at when I say that I think that just watching it from home is going to make it a lot tougher for people to really get interested, especially if we're playing a team like UW, where we know that we're most likely not going to come out there and stomp UW, but people are going to maybe want to watch men's basketball or women's basketball go up against U of O in the Civil War, because that's a big game. So if those things conflict, I just don't think that football is going to get the same viewers that basketball would get if you're mixing these 2 seasons together.
I understand what you're saying, but I kind of think we're failing to realize, or you're failing to realize, the scale, just the difference, how big football is compared to basketball. For example, obviously, there's not going to be any in-fan attendance, but just to give an idea of how much bigger football is than a women's or men's basketball, OSU's women's basketball last year averaged 5,450 fans per game, and that was number 15 in the NCAA. So we have one of the best student sections, one of the best fan turns outs for our women's basketball team, and that's 5,450 fans. When you compare that to the average attendance at an OSU football game, and we are nowhere near the top 20, I don't know where, I'm probably not in the top 50 for most attendance at a football game, and that was 32,424 fans. I mean, the scale is just so large. Even if these things directly interfere with each other, I still feel like football will take precedent. We've seen that take place over this time when there's like NBA bubble playoffs going on right now, and people are electing to watch week 2 Thursday night football instead of watching a game 4 in the Western Conference Finals, And there's something about that's why we're doing the show. There's something about it in the United States that football just seems to take precedent over every sport, and I'm kind of just starting to accept that. No matter what obstacles it faces, football is going to get the eye of the viewer.
Yeah, I guess I can agree with you on that. But I mean, you also have to look at it like this: that Reser Stadium compared to Gill is obviously going to house a lot more people. It's a lot bigger of a stadium, and you can fit more people into a football stadium than you can into a basketball stadium.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're really looking at the numbers like that, it's kind of tough because you're going to be able to fit more people in the football stadium. So you're most likely going to have way more attendance for a football game than you are a basketball game. And plus, if you look at Beaver football compared to the schedule for Beaver basketball, basketball is not just an every weekend thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a during the week, several times a day, or oh my God, not several times a day, but several times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It could be any day of the week. Compared to Beaver football, it's always going to be on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're always going to get more people to come out to something that's going to be specifically on the same day every time compared to during season for basketball, during school, during winter term, where there's going to be class and you don't have time, you have projects, you have homework, compared to you can get all your stuff done during the week before going to a Beaver football game.
I hate to cut you off. Quickly, though, I want to get to our last topic. I didn't realize we only have 3.5 minutes left, basically. But quickly, just doing a dive into Oregon State's recruiting class for this year. I want to get your initial thoughts. I'll share mine. I'm not sure how much ours will collide or how far apart we'll be. But overall, I'm not too impressed with our recruiting for this year. I don't think you can't expect much, but we didn't have a 4-star recruit. But one thing that I do think was encouraging is the transfers we got. We got Charles Moore, who just transferred from Auburn, which is a big pickup, SEC guy. And we also got Trayshawn Harrison, who transferred over from Florida State. I think next week we'll probably have to dive into more of the strategy and the long-term goals of how we can turn around our recruiting. But just looking at this year alone, how do you think Oregon State did recruiting-wise?
I don't think they did good. I think the reasoning with that is because they have just settled and accepted to be a 3-star school, a local school. A lot of our guys are from Oregon, California, Washington. I don't see any reason that we can't go outside of the Pacific Northwest and go find talent in other states. I understand that it might be tough to recruit people to a historically not so good football program, but when you're only getting 3 stars and less in every recruit that you get, your team isn't going to be good. You can't consider your team to be a contender if you're not going to get better recruits through your recruiting process. I think the way that the transfers went this year was good. Like you said, we got Harrison, and we also got Trey Lowe from Washington as well. So I think the transfers went well, but when it came to the actual recruiting process, I just think they settled with the least that they could get. I think they could have went out and got a lot more, and we could have gotten a lot better. But I'm happy with the people returning to the team and the additions that we got through transfers. I think that's going to help us. But recruiting overall, I'm not very satisfied with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you think that that's our key to? Because I really feel like it's a chicken and the egg type of thing. You can't recruit good players until you have a good program, but you can't get a good program until you can recruit good players. So it's kind of tough. Are we just gonna magically get good one day, or are we gonna somehow step up our recruitment before our play on the field steps up? But maybe that is the place we have to start, and this could be something we dive into in a later episode. But do you think maybe that's the avenue we should look to go for? Explore that more, is basically go trying to attract transfers to come to Oregon State, kind of make it like a second chance school in some respects, rather than trying to go for the top high school talent.
No, yeah, I agree. I think that being a second chance school would be a great thing for us. I think we would bring in a lot of talent, and it would help improve our team vastly compared to the recruits that we've been getting.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, it looks like we're about to be out of time, so we're going to wrap it up here. If you liked what you saw today, we have columns published exclusively with our new partners, Sports Pac-12. You can visit them at Sports Pac-12 on Twitter, or you can visit their website, sportspac12.com. Also, check us out, Dash TV. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Check out our own website as well for Dashboards TV at dashboards.tv. Looking forward to come back and give you more information on Beaver football in the future. We thank you for coming out to watch. I was your host, Morgan Heffelfinger.
Along with Gus Light. Appreciate you guys.